Eliza walked into the grand ballroom, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. The lights above sparkled, casting a soft glow over the guests who were mingling and exchanging smiles. She stood out in her designer gown, a perfect fit for the event. As she looked around, her eyes scanned the crowd, but she hardly noticed anyone. She was too focused on herself, too proud to really connect with those around her. Her arrival was almost like a storm. The room seemed to part as she made her way to the center of the event, her posture perfect, her expression cold. She didn't bother with pleasantries. A few people tried to greet her, but she barely acknowledged them. Instead, she gave a polite nod and quickly moved on, as if she was doing them a favor by even being in the same room. The guests seemed to understand this unspoken rule. Eliza was someone who didn't care much for small talk or meaningless pleasantries. She didn't see the need to make real connections with people who didn't matter to her. To her, this was just another event, another opportunity to show off her status and the life she had built for herself. The smiles from others were nothing more than background noise, and she hardly gave them a second thought. As the evening progressed, Eliza found herself growing bored. The wine flowed freely, and there was laughter around her, but it didn't reach her. She felt disconnected from it all. Her mind drifted back to how she had come to be here, how everything she had, from the luxurious car she drove to the expensive dress she wore, was a result of her hard work and sacrifice. She had built this life on her own, and she didn't owe anything to anyone. Then the announcement came that a live musical performance was about to begin. Eliza barely registered it, uninterested in the idea of listening to more charity event music. She had no patience for it. She took her seat, looking around at the people who seemed excited for the performance. They were all clapping, their attention drawn to the stage where the musicians were preparing. Eliza leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, still unsure of why she was even here. As the music began, she half listened, letting the notes fill the air, but not really connecting with them. The music was soft at first, almost like a whisper, but soon it grew louder, wrapping around her, drawing her in. At first, she thought it was just another song, another piece of background noise to get through. But then something changed. The melody felt oddly familiar, as though it was tugging at something deep within her. It wasn't just the music she was hearing. It was something more. The lyrics began to weave through the room, and in that moment, Eliza felt something stir inside. Her that she hadn't felt in years. It was a strange feeling, almost as if the song knew things about her life, things she'd buried, things she didn't want to remember. Eliza sat up in her seat, her attention suddenly sharp. She couldn't explain it, but something about this song was different. She had to keep listening. As the song played on, Eliza's curiosity deepened. The melody seemed to settle in her chest, and the lyrics felt like they were meant just for her. She couldn't shake the feeling that the words were describing moments of her own life. The tune was soft, but powerful, like a voice from the past, and with each passing note, memories she'd locked away began to resurface. Her mind wandered back to a time when things weren't as perfect as they appeared now. She remembered a friendship she had once had, a friendship that had slipped away because of her own choices. Back then, she had been so focused on her own image, her own success, that she had neglected the people who truly cared about her. She had cut ties with so many, thinking they would never understand her life or the choices she had made. But the song, it felt like a reminder of all that she had lost. The lyrics seemed to echo themes of regret, betrayal, and longing. At first, Eliza tried to brush it off as coincidence. There was no way the song was about her. After all, the event was just a social gathering, and the music was meant to be part of the entertainment. But as the song went on, it became harder to ignore. The words spoke of a friendship torn apart by distance and pride, of a relationship shattered by silence and misunderstanding. Eliza's heart started to beat a little faster. She couldn't help but think of that one person, the one she had hurt the most. It wasn't just the words that were getting to her. There was something in the way the music had been composed. It was like the artist knew the pain she carried inside, knew the emptiness she had been hiding under layers of pride and perfection. Eliza looked around the room, noticing that others seemed to be swept up in the song as well. But unlike the people around her, Eliza couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in her stomach. The song reached a point where it felt like the whole room had gone quiet, as if everyone was listening to the same secret, one that no one was brave enough to say out loud. Eliza's thoughts began to spiral. She realized that this song, this haunting melody, had a deep connection to her own life. It wasn't just a random performance, it was a message, a reminder of everything she had once lost because of her own actions. As the music swelled, Eliza felt a sense of unease creeping up her spine. It was no longer just background noise. It had become something personal, something that reached deep into her core. The lyrics, the tune, everything about it felt like an invitation to face the truth she had spent years avoiding. She couldn't look away. She couldn't ignore the memories rushing back. Something inside her told her that this moment, this song, was meant to change everything. Mini Eliza's heart raced as the song continued to play, each note digging deeper into her soul. She felt as if the music was speaking directly to her, unraveling all the carefully constructed walls she had built around herself. The more she listened, the more she realized how much the song mirrored her own life. The lyrics were not just about general feelings of loss or betrayal. They seemed to capture specific moments from her past, things only she would know. She couldn't help but think back to her younger days, when she was just starting to build the life she had now. There had been someone back then, a person who had been there for her through thick and thin, offering support when she needed it most. But as Eliza's life began to grow more successful, that person became less and less of a priority. She had gotten caught up in the world of high society, focusing on appearances and status, believing that those things would bring her happiness. And in the process, she had pushed away the people who truly mattered. As the song played on, Eliza could almost hear the familiar voice of that person in the lyrics. The words seemed to speak of the pain caused by someone who had once been a friend, someone who had been left behind in the pursuit of wealth and recognition. The realization hit her hard. This song wasn't just a random performance. It was about her, about the choices she had made and the people she had hurt. The emotions she had buried for so long started to bubble to the surface, and for the first time in a long while, Eliza felt vulnerable. She glanced around the room, trying to make sense of what was happening. The guests were still listening intently, some nodding along to the beat, while others looked moved by the music. But Eliza couldn't focus on them anymore. All she could think about was the person who had written this song, someone she hadn't spoken to in years. She remembered how they had once shared everything, their dreams, their hopes, and their fears. But somewhere along the way, she had let it all slip through her fingers, too busy with her own success to care. Her mind started to race. Was this song a message from that person? Had they written it to remind her of the friendship she had thrown away? Eliza's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the song's chorus, and it felt like the final punch. It was as if the song was calling her out, demanding that she face the consequences of her actions. She felt the weight of her past mistakes pressing down on her, and it was almost too much to bear. The music slowed, and Eliza's heart ached as she realized the depth of her regret. She had been so focused on her own image, her own success, that she had forgotten about the people who had once cared for her. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. The song had done what nothing else could. It had forced her to confront the truth, and now there was no turning back. As the last notes of the song echoed through the room, Eliza felt a lump form in her throat. The music had stopped, but the emotions it stirred within her lingered. Her heart was heavy, weighed down by the memories she had tried so hard to forget. She sat there, frozen, as the guests around her slowly returned to their conversations, still caught up in the afterglow of the performance. But for Eliza, the world around her had gone quiet. The vibrant energy of the gala felt distant, almost surreal, as she remained trapped in her own thoughts. The realization hit her like a wave. This song wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't a random tune played to entertain a crowd. It was a message from someone who had once been her closest friend, someone she had betrayed with no second thought. She had tried to bury the guilt and shame deep within herself, but the song had brought it all rushing back. It felt like the music was calling her out, demanding she acknowledge what she had done. She looked around the room again, this time more intensely. People were laughing, talking, enjoying the night, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing inside her. But then, her eyes landed on someone she hadn't noticed before, a figure standing by the side of the stage, watching the crowd with a calm expression. It wasn't until she focused more closely that she realized who it was. It was her former friend, the person who had written the song. Her heart skipped a beat. There was no mistaking it. The familiar face was unmistakable. Time had passed, and they had both changed. But there was no doubt. This was the person she had hurt so many years ago, the one she had shut out of her life when things started going well for her. They had always been a part of her past, but she had pushed them away in favor of her own ambitions, her own image. Her former friend was standing there, looking as calm and composed as ever. But Eliza could see something else in their eyes, a quiet sadness, a kind of knowing. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment, waiting for her to finally face the truth, to confront the consequences of her actions. Eliza's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she didn't know what to do. She felt like she was being pulled in two different directions. On one side, the urge to stay hidden in her pride and denial. On the other, the overwhelming need to make things right. The room seemed to grow smaller as Eliza stood up from her seat. Her legs were shaky, her thoughts scattered. She couldn't ignore this anymore. The music had cracked open a part of her that she had long since sealed, shut, and now, standing face to face with the person she had wronged, there was no way to pretend that everything was okay. The truth was staring her in the face, and for the first time in a long time, she realized that she couldn't keep running from it. The silence between them stretched on, heavy and thick. It was as if the world had paused, and it was just the two of them left in the room. Eliza took a deep breath, her mind racing. She knew she had to say something, but the words felt stuck in her throat. What could she say? How could she explain the years of distance, the hurt, the mistakes? Mini Eliza's heart pounded in her chest as she stood there, facing her former friend. The weight of the moment seemed to press down on her, making everything feel so heavy and surreal. For a moment she couldn't speak. The words she had rehearsed in her mind seemed to disappear, leaving her standing in an awkward silence. She wanted to say something, anything, but nothing felt right. How could she begin to explain all the years that had passed? How could she make up for the distance she had put between them? Her former friend didn't speak either. They just stood there, watching her with a calm, almost resigned expression. It was as though they had been expecting this confrontation for a long time. There was no anger in their eyes, no resentment, just a quiet, steady presence that seemed to reflect the years of pain that Eliza had caused. Eliza finally found her voice, but it was shaky. I'm sorry, she said, her words soft and unsure. It felt strange to say it out loud. For so long, she had convinced herself that she was in the right, that she had done what was necessary for her own success. But now, facing the truth, it was clear how much she had lost in the process. Her former friend didn't immediately respond. Instead, they gave her a small, almost sad smile, one that seemed to acknowledge her apology, but also understood the depth of what had been lost. "I thought you'd forgotten," they said quietly, their voice carrying a mix of sadness and acceptance. "I thought you didn't care anymore." The words hit Eliza like a punch to the gut. She had, in fact, forgotten about the pain she had caused. She had buried the guilt under layers of success, convincing herself that her achievements were enough to justify her actions. But hearing those words, hearing the truth in her friend's voice, made everything feel so much clearer. "I never wanted to hurt you," Eliza whispered, the shame in her voice evident. I thought I had to choose myself over everyone else, but I was wrong. I see that now." Her former friend nodded, their expression softening. "It's easy to get lost in your own world and forget the people who helped you build it," they said. "But it's not too late to make things right if you really want to." Eliza felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was mixed with the sadness of everything she had let go of. She had spent so much time pushing people away, thinking she was protecting herself. But in the end, all she had done was build a life full of loneliness. "I don't expect everything to be the same," her friend continued, "but if you're willing to change, we can start again. No one's perfect, but it's never too late to try." Eliza nodded slowly, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She didn't know what the future would hold or how to make up for the years she had lost, but one thing was clear. This was the first step toward healing, and it was a step she was ready to take. Eliza stood there, processing the weight of her former friend's words. They were simple, yet they carried so much truth. It was as if a part of her that she had buried, deep down, had finally been awakened. She had been so focused on her own world, her career, her image, that she hadn't seen what she had lost along the way. Now, standing here, with her former friend offering forgiveness and a chance to make things right, Eliza couldn't help but feel a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in years. "I don't know how to fix all of this," Eliza said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I want to try. I've hurt so many people, including you, and I've never truly understood the damage I've caused until now." Her friend looked at her with a steady, calm gaze. "The first step is realizing what you've done," they said softly. "And that's what you're doing now. A lot of people go through life without ever seeing the harm they've done to others. But you're different. You've seen it, and that's the first thing that matters." Eliza felt her heart swell with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. She had always been proud of her independence and her success, but now she realized that real success wasn't about building a life alone. It was about the people you lifted along the way. She'd spent so much time building walls, thinking that success would make her happy, but now, standing here, she realized that those walls had only kept her isolated. "I've been so selfish," she whispered, almost to herself. "I pushed you away, and I didn't even care. I thought I was doing what was best for me, but I was wrong." Her friend nodded, offering a small smile. "You were just lost, Eliza. You didn't know any better, but it's okay. What matters now is that you're willing to make a change." Eliza felt a sense of relief wash over her. It wasn't going to be easy. She knew that. The years of neglect and hurt weren't going to disappear overnight, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was ready to face the consequences of her actions and take responsibility for them. She wasn't perfect, and she knew she never would be, but she was willing to try, to learn, and to grow. "I'm sorry for everything," she said again, more firmly this time, "and I promise I'll do better. I won't make the same mistakes again." Her friend reached out, placing a hand gently on Eliza's shoulder. "I believe you," they said, "and that's all I can ask for." Eliza smiled, the burden on her heart starting to lift. It wasn't going to be easy, but she knew this was the beginning of something new. She was ready to rebuild the relationships she had broken, starting with the one that mattered most. As she looked into her friend's eyes, she knew that they could start again, that forgiveness was possible, and that it was never too late to change. The night was winding down, but for Eliza, everything had shifted. The glitz and glamour of the gala no longer felt important. She could hear the laughter and chatter around her, but it all felt distant now. What mattered was the moment she had just shared with her former friend. It felt like a fresh start, a new beginning she hadn't expected, but one she was ready to embrace. As the event continued, Eliza felt a strange sense of peace that she hadn't felt in years. The weight that had been on her chest for so long seemed to lift with each passing minute. For the first time in a long time, she was allowing herself to be vulnerable. She was no longer the person who built walls to protect herself. Instead, she was learning to tear those walls down, bit by bit. She found herself standing by the edge of the room, looking out over the crowd. People were still enjoying the evening, but Eliza was in a different place. Her mind kept going back to the conversation she had just had, to the words of her friend, to the realization of how much she had hurt others in the past. She thought about all the times she had ignored the people who cared about her, thinking her success was enough to fill the emptiness inside. But now she saw it for what it truly was, a distraction from the real connections that gave life meaning. Her former friend had offered her forgiveness, and Eliza knew that wasn't something everyone would be willing to give. She didn't take it lightly. The guilt of her past mistakes was still there, but she was no longer running from it. She was ready to face it, to make things right, no matter how long it took. As the night came to a close, Eliza knew she couldn't just go back to her old ways. The person she had been, self-centered, disconnected and distant, wasn't who she wanted to be anymore. She had learned that true success wasn't about accumulating wealth or status. It was about the people you cared for, the relationships you built, and the love you gave and received. She realized now that all the accolades in the world couldn't replace the warmth of a genuine connection. With the event ending, she sought out her former friend one last time before leaving. This time, there was no hesitation, no pride in her chest. She walked up to them, her eyes clear and her heart open. "Thank you," she said simply, the words carrying the weight of everything she felt. "Thank you for giving me a chance to change." Her friend smiled warmly, their eyes softening. "We all deserve that chance, Eliza. We just have to take it when it comes." Eliza nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over her. As she walked out of the gala, she didn't have all the answers, but she knew she was on the right path. The journey wouldn't be easy, and the mistakes of the past couldn't be undone. But for the first time, she felt hopeful, ready to rebuild her life, not on the foundation of success, but on the foundation of love, humility, and second chances. It was a new beginning, and Eliza was determined to make the most of it. Tout many.